All right, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. And Councillor Bissinger, we saved the best for last. So you had your hand up.
Sure,
Go ahead.
thanks. All right. I was able to take a few moments and put some thoughts down on paper, so bear with me. Fellow councillors and mayor, I wish to remind you when and why this motion was first made. Have we forgotten already what spring and summer of 2020 was like? The uncertainty of what the future would hold when everyone got into gardening, as we were all kept home and saw how crucial it was for us to know how to provide for ourselves. It was when our supply chain was at a standstill, when we didn't know if we would be getting fresh fruits or vegetables from California due to borders closing and shortages of laborers resulting in less fruit coming from the Okanagan. Have we forgotten already what we were trying to achieve with this motion? Food security for our town residents. The possibility to harvest their own eggs, grow their own food in a time where we see more and more forest fires ravaging the backbone of the fruits and vegetables of our country, as we saw this summer with the Okanagan, mainland BC getting destroyed by forest fires. More storms in the winter resulting in ferry cancellations, power outages, and likely shortages of supplies in the grocery stores. The intent was to make food security accessible to those that perhaps get no sun in their backyards, and those that want to know they can feed their families or trade with neighbors, not if need be it, but when need be it. So I urge you to consider approving the motion as presented. And as a bonus, next time you bake a cake and run out of eggs, you'll just have to knock next door. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Any other further questions or comments on that? So for myself, similar to what Councillor Grant was saying, there's some parts of this I like, some parts that I don't. So there, as the motion that it stands from the recommendation from the CAO, I would not support that. However, I would like to make an amending motion that we restrict the residential hen keeping to large lots, and that would be defined by a staff report to from staff to tell us what sizes of lots they would see. And as far as for myself with greenhouses in the front yards, I would not support that. So, Mr. CAO, we have that amendment, but how do we just vote separately on this, or do we have to defeat this main motion and then cherry pick the three?
So anybody on council can say that the three items within this motion aren't related to each other and they should be voted on separately. And then all three items would be separated and voted on their own accord. And that can be requested by anybody on council, and it's basically automatically granted. So you can go that route. You could amend the motion like you've suggested you may do now. So it's really up to you how you want to proceed. If there seems to be a difference on the specific issues, I would suggest them being separated out into their own issue and decided that way.
Councillor McGowan?
Thanks. I just wanted to make one point about the larger lot size. For one thing, I guess you can still mistreat animals on a large lot, but at least a lot of people that are interested in keeping hens for food security may not necessarily be on the top earning. We might not be making that much money, and we might not own the larger lots. So I just don't want this to turn into another kind of poor tax thing where, well, you're too poor to do it because your yard's not big enough. That's my concern with that.
Councillor Minions?
Yeah, I can kind of see that it probably should be broken apart. Does anyone disagree in breaking these apart and having them each individually? So I'll move we break them apart.
I support that.
It's all. No, it's if it's requested, then it would be.
And then I just want to go back to it. I think there's quite a few varying opinions on this, and so knowing that it might, be a large lot report or however that's going to go before it gets fully turned down, I really think that doing some form of a pilot project with all three of them in even a small to medium way would be the way to really see if this works in Comox or not. So I would highly encourage that we at least look at doing 10 or you know, we already have homes doing that. So whether they would qualify immediately for those, and we put the people that are already in, we'll call it bylaw contravention, just straight through those processes. I would hate for us to turn down something that seems to be something our residents want to do to provide eggs for their own homes.
Okay, so it looks like we'll move through each 1, 2, and 3 then, the alternatives to recommendation. So
The first motion would be, it would read the exact as it does now, but instead of permit all 3 components, so let's start maybe the first one saying would permit farm stands.
okay, so one recommendation that the town of Comox would permit farm stands.
Let the town of Comox prepare for council's consideration the necessary bylaw amendments to permit farm stands based on the. Yeah.
Right, okay,
I'll move that.
all right, for discussion, Councillor Grant?
So I'm looking at this and, you know, I don't have a real big problem. I mean, we've got all sorts of book nooks and I've seen the art stand out there and all sorts of little stands out front and they look good. My concern is that when you bring them into under bylaw, all of a sudden you have rules and regulations that come with that. And part of me says, why don't we just leave well enough alone? Why don't we just let them be the way they are? Nobody's complaining, nobody's saying anything. All of a sudden, you're going to start having to look at possible regulations and somebody will complain and then we have to take action. We don't have an issue with this right now. So we don't have any problem with bringing it. And I just think we might be causing a problem we don't have.
Right, okay. And Councillor McGowan, sir, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just had a thought when, about Councillor Gott's point there. And yeah, I have half a mind to say, yeah, leave it alone, because then nobody, don't bother them. But at the same time, having it publicly stated that, yes, it is allowed, will allow the people that are maybe on the fence or don't want to, you know, get a bylaw infringement. It would allow them to move forward with what they want to do.
Okay, any other questions, comments on this? Councillor Bissinger?
Sure, thanks. And just to Councillor Grant's comment, like, are we allowed to, you know, decriminalize instead of legalize farm stands, for example? Same thing with chickens. Like, I'm curious to know, maybe to the CAO, like, have we had bylaw complaints about chickens? Because, like, you know, there's one at the corner of Hummingbird and Cormorant that you could see it on the side of the house, and I've seen it there for months.
You get that address?
You know, it never, I think the house sold, so I don't know if it's same owners have it or whatever, but like, have we had complaints, I guess is the question. And then, you know, to Councillor Grant's comment, like, you know, I agree, if we're going to start saying, okay, cool, you need a building permit for a farm stand, you know, it needs to be sited in this location, you know, 3 feet back from the sidewalk, and it has to have, you know, structural design out of it or whatever, then I see that as being worse than we are right now. That's totally not the intent. So I don't know how to capture that, or like I said, if we can decriminalize it versus legalize it or whatever, if that's an option.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments on this?
Yeah, I guess a report will tell us, and I guess I would wait for the report. But what about things like food safe, business licenses, building permits? You know, all of that starts to come into play here. You know, I don't know the answer to any of those. I guess they'll come in the report, but those are things to consider as well.
Yeah, serving it right. I mean, you know, I don't know. Those are good questions. Councillor Minions, then McGowan.
I think like greenhouse wise, I know a couple of people that have them in their front yards. They're not getting bylaw because they look quite nice. It's if you don't have the proper room or sunlight. So I don't know that there's that many like people selling from farm stands their vegetables and fruits. Like I think most of this is personal use. So yeah, I don't know how, if we can get information back from staff on if it's not a bylaw issue that we're seeing time and time again, and if creating a full policy does make it where there is more rules, then maybe, but just an indication if Comox's will is that it's only a problem if it's a nuisance or we get a complaint about it. But if there is a tone that they're actually getting complaints and bylawing people, it'd be good to get that feedback, because the goal would not be to make them stricter. But I think greenhouses that people are doing are for personal use more than, like, I know there's been 1 or 2 stands that were selling bread and baking, and I know that the neighbors all loved those stands that were there and no longer there right now. Just if council's will is to kind of let them be, what does that look like?
So we, not that I'm aware of, and other staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't received any complaints around farm stands. And what I'm imagining the regulations that would come back and we need to sit down and talk about this with staff would be a generally hands-off approach where we wouldn't be regulating where they need to be placed, what they need to look like and those sorts of things, but to say that you could have them there. But where we would likely be headed would be unprocessed foods. So those are the things like eggs, carrots, cucumbers, and all of those sorts of things. Not things like bread, not things like alcohol, not things like jams, not things like preserves. So the farm stand becomes the things that are produced from your garden and from your yard. I'd further that and say we know that this happens quite often in the town of Comox where people are selling those type of processed foods. We will deal with the issue if there's complaints. If we don't get complaints, we don't deal with it because we don't see it quite as an issue. I'm aware of multiple lemonade stands run by children throughout the town. We're not going to be going and trying to close them down either. So that's kind of where staff's head is at, or where my head is at when we're talking about the farm stands. It's something that's unregulated and unprocessed food. So it wouldn't include things like bread or jams, but that's ultimately council's decision. And the reason that we're at, or where I'm at that point, is that it doesn't turn into a business. You don't need to get business licenses. You're not going to be creating enough traffic to bother your neighbors. But again, that's a line for council to draw, not for staff to draw.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Bissinger, did you have your hand up or was it McGowan? Okay, McGowan, sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, no, just to that point, I was going to say something similar to the lemonade stand thing. I think when you're buying things from the side of the road, it's goes without saying, buyer beware, right? So if you're buying vegetables and things like that, then it's, you wash them first. It's not a big deal. But if you're buying jam, that's something that you would probably, I don't know, it buyer beware. It's the side of the road.
Okay, thanks. And Councillor Minions, did you have a comment? Okay, that's it. All right, so anything further? So can you read the motion out again for us? For the
that the town of Comox prepare for council's consideration the necessary bylaw amendments to permit farm stands based on the survey results summarized in the September 8th, 2021 planning report on RZ 20-4 and the urban agriculture bylaws adopted by the city of Courtenay.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Yeah, and so then we're going through the other two as well here. So let's since we were doing number two, let's do number three. This is for green. Exactly. Exactly. That they may. The main motion to amend the so greenhouses. Do we have
No.
any different wording on this CAO than that you would like to see for a motion, or would just read it as is?
Same wording, just instead of farm stands, it would be greenhouses in the front yard.
Okay, so greenhouses in the front yard. Any questions or comments? Councillor Swift.
I guess I haven't spoken regarding front yard greenhouses, but I don't like the idea of that. I don't mind greenhouses in the backyard, but I prefer not to have them in the front yard, so I won't support that.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Councillor Bissinger and then McGowan.
So yeah, I support greenhouses in the front yard. I think some houses are treed, some houses have, south facing, north facing, whatever. And sometimes you just don't have sun in your backyard. Like my house on Rob Road, like the only place that I have sun was on one of the sides that ends up being in the front yard. So, I think as long as they're tasteful, and I think part of the report that would be prepared by staff would have considerations for what they would look like or the size and the setbacks. So I support the motion as it is.
Okay, thanks. Councillor McGowan.
Yeah, no, it was just another push that, things might not necessarily be gorgeous, but these are things that we have to do to maintain our food security and make sure that we're moving forward during the climate emergency. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? So this vote is to support greenhouses in the front yard. So all in favor? 3 in favor, opposed? 3 opposed, so that fails. And the chickens, so the same wording, and this is to have backyard chickens.
I'll move the motion.
Yes, yeah, I was going to go through that. So I'd like to put the amending motion that we restrict the residential hen keeping to large lots, and that would be provided in the staff report to us. So do we have a seconder of that? So go ahead.
So I've got the motion, but you need a seconder.
Yeah, yeah. So we need a seconder for that one. And, okay, so we do have a seconder. All right, for discussion. So this is to have hens, but in large lots. Go ahead, Councilor McGowan.
Yeah, just to reiterate what I was saying before, limiting the size of the lots doesn't necessarily make sure that the chickens are going to be treated well, kept well, or smell good. And it takes out a portion of the population that could greatly benefit from having this opportunity.
Yeah, thanks. And I agree. I'm trying to find a compromise here that, you know, people, all the folks can live with, because we've seen a lot of negative comments on this, even though I think it was 68% in favor of it, but there was a lot of negative comments. So
Just to reply that the vocal minority is always, you know, the opposition is often the vocal minority.
thank you. And Councilor Minions, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't oppose necessarily what large lot looks like, but I think for me, it's more as we get into like small, dense lots that might be like 0.08, which is about a half lot. Like I don't see that being plausible with not taking away from someone's enjoyment. So I still just really stand by this is something that the community is somewhat looking to support in all of the Comox Valley. And as our other communities move forward with it at the same time, I think it's a good time to be doing it. So I think that if we had like a 20 license temporary pilot project for 2 years, and I think the other communities will probably go forward a little more fulsomely. I wouldn't not support necessarily having some sort of lot size, but it would be much more probably regular to large lots. And again, a very starter number of licenses and trying to get information on where there are chickens. I think there's a couple in the area that I live in, so or more than a couple. So just getting an idea of, you know, maybe 10 people apply and then there's 10 applications, and in a year we find out 2 people have applied. So I think there's that middle ground here instead of just outright saying no. And I don't necessarily think a regular medium-sized lot can't accommodate someone who knows what they're doing on having 4 hens to provide eggs for themselves. So personally, I think a pilot project on a medium to large lot would be the way to go to get information on who has them now and what the uptake actually would be in Comox, because I don't know that it would be that large here. Or, you know, some people, but maybe not that many.
Okay, thanks, Councilor Bissinger and then Grant.
Thanks. Yeah, just to echo Councillor Minion's comments about a pilot project, I just wonder if it'd be worthwhile for staff to put together a report. I know Courtney's had chickens, I guess, legal or in their bylaw for a couple months now. So I'd be curious, you know, could we get staff to get some information from them and just kind of make that decision more informed? I know the survey is basically like a 68-34 split or 32 split or whatever the math equals to. And I feel, you know, also we are in a 3-3, so like a tie is defeat. So I could also word the motion that I would support that chicken bylaws are not presented in the bylaw, and if it got defeated, then it would pass. So I would prefer if this was deferred later, because it is such a huge thing and the population did, you know, veer in favor of it. And maybe we just need a staff report that gives us a bit more information based on how Courtney's doing.
Okay. But maybe I'd vote with you on that one. Then it would really throw a wrench into things. The CAO, did you have your hand up?
Sorry, I was just gonna say that council's talking about two different processes that staff would have to move forward. If we're talking about changing the bylaws and zoning to allow it versus bringing in a pilot project, that's two different paths for us to head down. If council would like a report on whether or not to craft bylaws or develop a pilot project, we can do that. But to send us down the path to create the bylaws and then to want a pilot project won't work. They're two different solutions.
Yeah.
So just when this is done, that council's aware that those are two different solutions, and we'll need the direction on which way we're going.
Right, so the motion that we had with my amendment was that it would be going to staff report for large lots, and we would see what that would look like.
Yeah.
And then we would debate that at a later time.
Yeah, so the motion you have on the floor is to make bylaw amendments for larger lots. Yes, yeah, but that would not be a pilot project.
Correct. Yeah, and for me, again, I just have to say that's a compromise, because I'm not totally against the chickens, but I see in areas where there's townhouses, you'd have a couple chickens. I think it would be a bit of a nuisance to the neighbors, but again, I'm not opposed to it, but in the right setting. Councillor Bissinger, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. And maybe just as a follow-up to your motion, Mayor, for larger lots, I think that, if we're talking about a pilot project, then maybe that makes sense, do that for a year and then put in the motion for reconsideration in a year from today or something of the sort, so that we could actually look at other lots if it is successful. And if it isn't successful, then we, remove it or whatnot. Would that make sense?
I believe that though you were saying the pilot project, and this is two different things.
Well, no, all I'm saying is that your motion right now is to prepare a staff report for consideration of hens on larger lots for the following year, with the option to be reconsidered on smaller lots a year from today. Therefore, it would kind of act as a pilot project with the option to reintroduce hens in smaller yards next year.
I'm comfortable with the motion that I have.
So I guess one of the things when I look at the larger lot situation, it's, Councillor Minion said, people that know what they're doing can do it on smaller lots. Well, it's the people that don't know what they're doing that are going to be the problem, not the ones that do know what they're doing. So, that's the concern, is they don't look after them, they don't clean them, they're not done properly. The rats and the rodents, I think that's exactly what people are worried about.
Councillor Swift.
Well, I can see the logic in suggesting a pilot program, but my mind still goes back to the woman who obviously doesn't want to complain about her neighbor and is having to live in a less than desirable situation in her own yard. And so I think, there's lots of chickens all over this town that are being well tended, but we really don't have the clout to deal with them when they're not. So although I can see the logic in a pilot program, I don't think I can support that either.
Okay, Councillor McGowan.
So I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. So a larger lot would be better, whether they are well treated or not. Like that. When you're saying that, even on a smaller lot, well-tended chickens can be fine. But you're worried about the ones that aren't well-tended. Well, that can happen on a large lot too. And there's probably going to be people further away, so they won't be able to tell you that that's going on as easily. But yeah, it just seems like a larger lot isn't, it might take the smell down a little bit or something, but it's not going to solve the problem of the poorly tended chickens.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we had the motion that, do you want to read that out again one more time, CAO, so we're all clear on that? Please.
That the town of Comox prepare for council's consideration the necessary amendments to permit raising chickens on larger lots based on the survey results summarized.
Okay, so that's Councillor Minions.
Can I just ask a quick question about the motion? So would we get a report back on what larger lots look like before the bylaws were created, or the bylaws will come back to us, including what staff has kind of concluded is a larger lot. I'm just curious if we'll get something before bylaws, like one more step, or what that looks like.
You would get a bylaw which would include the suggested lot size, but in the report, you would have alternatives for which you could make the change if you wanted.
Okay, thanks. All right. Seeing no further hands up, all in favor of that? 4 in favor. Opposed? 2 opposed. Okay, thank you. So at a later date, we will have something from staff on that. All right, thank you. I didn't want to run that too long, but I think it needed a whole lot of discussion on that. So now we go to Northeast Comox Implementation Bylaw, third reading report. We have 8 recommendations from our trustee CAO. And I'm going to start with number 1, the Comox Drainage Infrastructure Protection Bylaw 1824 be given third reading. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Number 2, the Comox Highway Use Bylaw 1920 be given third reading. Questions? All in favor? And number 3, the Subdivision Development Services Bylaw, Amendment Bylaw number 1977-2021 be amended as follows. A, adding as section 4 and renumbering accordingly the following text. Section 3.3 definitions is amended by adding the following definition: residential zone, which means a zone listed as such in S 4.1 of Comox zoning bylaw 1850. And for certainty, does not include any multifamily residential zone. B, Schedule A, a new section 1.5 of Appendix E to Schedule C.1 be amended as follows. By changing the text in Note 6, Table 4 in Section 1.5.1.2 from parcels in residential zones are 60% impervious and all other parcels are 90% impervious, to single-family land uses are 60% impervious and all other land uses are 90% impervious. And 2, by replacing section 1.5.5.1 with following text: disconnected roof leader standard drawing SE-3. Okay, you guys gonna make me read this whole thing, or Ken, I'm waiting for you to jump in. I'm waiting for you, okay. Okay, so all in favor of 3? Yeah, okay, on that, do we want to vote on that? Or
I have a question on that,
Okay.
what you just read.
Okay,
It was the section about not including any multifamily residential zone. Does that mean that the entire area is going to be zoned single family only? Because that's not what I would like to see.
so do we not want to read this? We have a mover, seconder, then questions. So yeah, I just, so we had a mover and a seconder. Okay, so is that where we're at? Okay, so go ahead.
If it's been moved and seconded, and then we have a question.
Okay, sorry, carry on.
No, that's just to make sure that when we're talking about single family, that it's specific to single family, does not include multifamily. So that's a definition for use in the regulations themselves.
Marvin, what is the current zoning in the area?
Current zoning in the area is single family. Current OCP designation is ground oriented infill, I believe, and we do have a motion on council to look at amending the OCP to allow for multifamily. If that were to pass, then we would adjust these bylaws accordingly.
Thank you very much. That's exactly what I wanted to know.
Okay, thanks. Councilor Minions?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm. So these are, and this is a simple question, but these are at third reading. So we're still going to have final adoption, and that's not this evening. Is that correct?
Correct.
Final adoption is not this evening. Okay, thank you.
All right, so any other questions on that? So this is number 3, all in favor? Yeah, that's carried, thank you. That's subdivision, number 4, that's subdivision and development servicing bylaw amendment number 1977-2021 as amended, be given third reading. Any questions on that? All in favor? Okay.
Second,
Any questions? This is the Comox runoff control bylaw. Questions, comments? All in favor? 6, storm drain connecting. Seconder. Questions or comments on 6? Councillor McGowan.
Seeing as I am not an engineer or anything even close to that, I just wanted to bring there were some very concerned people at the public hearing, and I just wanted to find out if any of that correlates with what we're approving and if there's anything that we need to kind of look at before moving further. If any good points had been raised that,
And maybe through the CEO to the planner, was there anything that we should be mindful of with those comments that were made at the public hearing?
So I think there's a general concern that development in the area may impact downstream, specifically on the stormwater. We have spent considerable time and money to try and make sure that we're getting this right. I hope we've been clear with council throughout that we cannot guarantee anything on this. We're going into fairly uncharted territories, and we are going above and beyond the regulations that are really adopted in other areas. We're a leader in this, so we have done what we can as best we can to make sure that stormwater will not impact downstream. There were other questions raised that maybe I'd have to turn to Marvin to see if he knows, or we may have to go back and talk a little bit. It seemed to me, and maybe I misunderstood this, but there was concern that the amount of impervious surface area that was going to be created in Northeast Comox would prevent water from entering the ground and into the water tables. I don't know if that is a legitimate concern or not.
In the upcoming report after the public hearing, we would address the items raised at the public hearing and provide commentary in that report.
Yeah. Okay, so sorry, that was number 7 we were doing, correct, Sean? 6? Okay, so any questions, number 6? All in favor? Okay, number 7, and this is
Second.
storm drain. So any questions or comments about this? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Number 8, the Comox building amendment bylaw for third reading. Seconder on that?
second,
Questions, comments? Yes. Okay, any questions or comments? All in favor? Great, thank you. Well, again, as I said a while ago, this has been a long time in coming, and as Ken said, 13 years. So, well done by staff for sticking it out this long, and appreciate that. Yeah. Okay, and I'm just blabbing because I need to find my spot. My hyperlinks are not working, so it's not bringing me back to where I was. Okay, sorry. All right, so this is a new business, appointment of election officers and varying election procedures. So we have 3 recommendations.
second,
Any questions or comments on this? All in favor? Okay, number 2,
second,
questions, comments? All in favor? And number 3,
second.
questions or comments? All in favor? Great, thanks. Let the best person win. Okay. Okay, so notice a motion from August 11th, from Beckton Parking from Councillor Bissinger that the street parking area on the north side of Beckton, closest to the intersection of Beckton Drive and Silversmith, be increased from approximately 45 feet to approximately 90 feet.
Moved.
Okay, questions or comments? Councillor Minions.
I'm just wondering if there's any comments from staff on the implication of that and if it's based on what's been said for like traffic safety and if there's any concerns there, or that's something relatively easy to do to mitigate as a solution.
So the area that that is in does not have the ability to have 3 cars pass side by side. You can only get 2 cars going by each other. The traffic plan did identify as not having, by not increasing that amount of parking. Now, can it be done safely to increase it to the 90 feet? Not within what the traffic study says, but within a general layperson taking a look at it, it can be done safely. I would want to note though, that expanding this may create complaints going the other way of people who are trying to get by there. And now you have a really long stretch where you're going to have to wait in order for other cars to be able to pass by each other. So we don't want to extend it towards the intersection very much. We would extend it the other way. But again, would there be the possibility that when this is extended and if that parking gets used, that we're going to get complaints that it's difficult to pass? I think there's a chance that would happen, yes.
Just a quick follow-up to that. You know, when I went out there and it was like 5:30, it was a busy time of day, and they were talking about, you know, the different residents were saying would have been taken away. At that time, only about 50% of the parking was taken. So it was, you know, I'm trying to see both sides here. But if this is done and it's increased by that 45 feet or put back to what it was before, I guess would be the case. Is there much like cost or staff time to kind of putting this back? I would assume not.
You mean
Removal of signs,
putting it,
like
if we
remove.
extend it and it doesn't work, to put it back to where it was before?
Well, just if the motion as
Yeah.
read is passed, is it just simply a removal of signs and then it's done? I'm just wondering if
Yeah, it's moving 2 signs.
Okay, so if there's
Maybe
no-
one, but possibly just moving 2 signs. So it's not a massive project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I know I'm in favor of this. This issue's been dogging us for a while, and for decades it was parking along there. And then I think there was one issue with a van, and that's what caused this. So, I don't think it's the end of the world. So do we have any other questions or comments before we vote? So all in favor of increasing the parking? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. And thanks, Councilor Bissinger, for going out there and speaking with that fellow and taking that on. All right, single-use plastics regulation. So we have 4 recommendations. We have 3 alternatives to the recommendations. So what is your feeling, Councilor McGowan?
Can I move the alternatives
Okay,
as well?
Councilor Minions?
I'll second that.
Okay. So, yeah.
Sorry,
so,
what
so
was
you
just moved?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure, because did you say the alternatives in addition to the recommendations or as well as recommendations? Because it's either one or the other. Am I mistaken on that?
So maybe if I could just maybe help council up through this, how about we defeat, let's put motion number 1 and defeat the old bylaw, because that needs to be defeated. And then we can give the first reading to bylaw in 1985, and then you can move the amendments to the bylaw, if that works for you guys.
Yeah. Okay, so the recommendation 1 that bylaw 1923 be defeated at 3rd reading.
Move.
Second.
Okay, any questions on that? All in favor? Opposed? All right, Ken's in favor. I think he's watching a hockey game or something over there. Okay, so page 285. Yeah, my hyperlink isn't working either. So I'm having a hard time getting back and forth. Are you there, Ken? Are you comfortable? Okay, so So number two, that bylaw 1985, bylaw to regulate the business use of single-use plastics be given first reading.
Yeah, so pass the first reading and then introduce your amendments.
So moved and second. Okay, so any questions or comments on that? Okay, Minions and then McGowan.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a really quick comment. I know it's been a couple years since this has come up, and a couple of years ago, our local business community was talking about it and the DIA was in support. And then along came kind of COVID, where it was no longer okay to be using plastics and takeout containers and such. So Haley from the BIA gave me a call this morning. I'm not sure if she spoke with anyone else probably, but we kind of talked about the positives of the province having that 6 months, is that we can really get into fulsome conversations about what it looks like after our first and second reading of either the recommendation or the recommendation and alternative. But there's a lot of positive things that we can do here, being a seaside community and talking about what we're doing to kind of protect the ocean. And there's some opportunities. So the BIA is definitely looking forward to working with us and the businesses and kind of being a liaison, as well as the other Comox Valley communities that are moving in that direction. So hopefully we can, maybe on number 4, we can make a quick addition to make sure that the BIA is really included in the discussion, but they're definitely on board to getting back onto the conversation and being a liaison between the businesses and us to make sure it's something that's not harming them at a time of recovery. But it's definitely, you know, we talk about it a lot, but it would be nice to just move this forward after a couple of years. So I'd be very supportive of at least giving this the first reading so we can get it started again. And sorry, the first and second reading, as well as the containers, which is something that we spoke about briefly before. It was just checkout bags and straws, which we don't really see a lot of anymore. Can't think of the straws that I see. But adding the polystyrene foam service containers, we'd be giving that first and second reading, but only because we know there has to be a good fulsome discussion before any final bylaws are in place. So it's not being done without consultation from business and also keeping the community in mind.
Great, thank you. And Councillor McGowan.
Could you turn your mic on, please, Steph?
Yes, sorry. This summer was a clear wake-up call that climate change is here on our doorstep and people died. We need to do everything in our power to lower our carbon footprint and keep waste down. Removing plastics is a good step in the right direction. It's not unprecedented, and we have been given this power for a reason. So Comox has the opportunity to be on the forefront of positive change. I want to be clear that some should remain in circulation for the service of those who have some disabilities and don't have what they need to consume their food, so that there's no discrimination there. But alternatives should be used whenever possible, of course. I do support a collaborative approach, but I don't want to see it take too long, because sometimes when we are working with everybody else, it tends to roll on. And I do feel there is a sense of urgency among people. So yeah, I support the polystyrene foam containers and plastic utensils being included as well.
Okay, so we're on number 3 there.
I was on number 2 still.
We're on number 2 or number 3?
We're on 2.
2? Okay, so we're on number 2.
Yeah, so I don't have any problem with the foam containers. I think there's lots of alternatives out there. I'm not sure what the plastic utensils does to take out restaurants and take out where we're encouraging people to go and do takeout. I'm not sure what that's going to do to that. So I think you're correct in that we really do need to have a chat with a lot of the restaurants in the BIA and those people and get them included in this to make sure that we're not, you know, causing an issue here for some of the businesses in town. So, you know, I'm glad that there's a bit of a buffer time to be able to do that. But I mean, on its face, it looks good, but I just wonder about that piece.
Right, and with that, I too was speaking with Haley at the BIA, and one of the things that I wasn't aware of is that John's Independent, they don't offer paper bags right now. It's part of the chain does not do that. And while he does want to comply and he does want to do this, it'll take a while for them to change their model. So, but I think we have that 6-month buffer in here. So any other questions on that for number 2? All in favor? All right, thank you. And number 3, so this is for second reading.
Second,
Any other questions? Councillor McGowan and then Minions.
I was just hoping to include the polystyrene foam ware containers and plastic utensils in the motion, making sure that that's in there.
I second if we need a seconder.
CAO.
Yeah, that's fine. It would just go back to the same question we had before, whether or not these are split into 2 separate motions or whether it's the same.
Mhm.
And that's up to council.
Nicole, how do you feel about this? I'm gonna put you on the spot.
I would like to put the single-use plastics number 3 on second reading and the polyurethane together and pull out plastic utensils. So put the first 2 together and pull out plastic utensils, since that's what it seems like is the sticking point to discuss, if anyone agrees with that.
CAO.
So what we would have is we'd have a motion for second reading with an amendment to include plastic utensils. So what is foam containers? So what's on the floor right now is an amending motion to include foam containers. At the conclusion of council deciding that motion, a separate amending motion could be made for plastic utensils. So just one more time, what's on the floor right now is an amending motion to include the foam containers.
To number 3. Okay.
I second that.
And sorry, did
I
you?
moved that.
You're done. Okay. So any other questions on that? All in favor? All right. Now that's carried. And for number 4,
I'll make an amending motion that we discuss number 2 alternative, which would be a ban on single-use utensils. So that's a separate motion, amending motion, as Jordan mentioned.
Yeah, so the
Second.
regular motion has been amended to include the foam containers, and now we have amending motion to include the plastic utensils.
okay, gotcha. All right,
I'll
so we have a
second it.
mover and seconder of that. So questions or comments on that? Minions, McGowan? You guys want to tag team? McGowan?
Okay. I mean, there are alternatives. I have multiple packs of little fork, spoon, knife that I just have in my purse or my bag that I take with me so that they're there if I need them. They're not an expensive accessory either. And I'm sure there are a million other ways that amazing people have come up with to make it work. I don't see a way why we can't put it in the conversation now, see what everybody, how the business association feels about it. And if that's an issue, we can exclude it later, but at least to have it in the conversation now would be, I think, a positive thing.
Okay, thanks. And Nicole, did you have a follow-up or anything?
Yeah, I was kind of on the fence between the 2 of whether that hinders businesses on the takeout or it doesn't, or we can go on educate, I would almost rather encourage businesses to do that and do the other 3 so timing goes quickly. But I do think that it's good to get business. If we don't put it in the motion, then we're not necessarily going to get that business feedback. So I don't know that I would proceed on that necessarily, but I do think it should be included. So we get the feedback from BIA and restaurants. It's probably the hardest sticking point. So I would say to leave it based on getting information back.
Okay. Councilor Ryan?
Yeah, oh, sorry, I don't have any problem as long as we have the chance to discuss it. I would note that we don't all have persons to carry things around in, so that's a problem sometimes.
That's your problem. Okay, so, all right, so we've discussed that. So all in favor? Yeah, that's carried. Thank you.
And then now we have the main motion that needs to be voted on, which is the second reading of the bylaw with the 2 amendments.
I'm glad you're keeping track.
Moved.
All right, so we have a mover and a seconder. Yeah. Any questions to Jordan on that one? All in favor? All right, thank you. And Nicole, thanks for bringing this back. I do know it's an important issue that we need to start tackling for sure. All right, sorry, can I go back and find my spot?
So So we're moving on to motion number 4, or recommendation 4. I can read it out here.
Yeah, I've lost my spot again.
That the town of Comox coordinate with other Comox Valley communities to develop similar regulations to be implemented at the same time, and any suggested changes be brought to council for consideration.
Any questions on that? Counselor,
So, yeah, no, I do, and maybe just to set the stage for council debate. So there's going to be a meeting taking place not only amongst the Comox Valley, but I think the large chunk of the island on September 22nd on this
Right.
issue. And I can report out to them that council has looked to include the plastic forks as well as the foam containers. When we do, I guess what I would like to know from council is how important it is to you to make sure that our regulations will line up with what Courtney is doing and what Cumberland is doing. Is that something that you would rate as fairly important to create that consistency? Or if you wanted to go a different direction than they do, are you comfortable with that as well?
but for myself, I think it's important to keep consistent. Example I make, somebody goes shopping at the Crown Isle Plaza and then they cross into Comox and McDonald Road and they go to QF and we have a different policy. I think we need to, while I'm not big on regional approaches on things, this one is this one is important to keep together. Councillor Minions.
I was gonna say it's like an 8 probably, because I think the reality is Courtney and Comox are so close, whereas Cumberland has been doing this for years and years. So they might have other steps that they even go further than, because they have a smaller community. So I think if we found out Courtney had decided to wait a year and a half and we decided we wanted to move forward sooner on something, or something just doesn't line up, it's important, but it doesn't have to be exactly the same. So mediumly high. An 8. It's an 8. I mean, it's important because, but time-wise, if it meant that it took 3 times as long to implement, it's not that important because Cumberland implemented years ago. So we may not line up exactly, but so.
Sir McGowan, go ahead.
Similar thought to Councillor Minions that, as long as it doesn't make it take an excessively longer time, and also, as long as we're not doing less than what we could, because I think we need to do everything that we can, and, not doing something because somebody else, or, we can be the leaders on this if we need to be, is what I mean to say.
Okay, thank you.
So did we give staff any direction there or not? Because I heard we want to do it with them, but only maybe. So I'm not sure what we just told them.
Yeah, that's all I was looking for, was just a general feeling. This is going to come back to council anyway, but this gives me some flavor when I'm talking to the region to say, we're interested in participating, but kind of here are the parameters. With Courtney and Cumberland both having passed bylaws, they're likely going to have to rescind and create, but with the legwork that's been done already, that's probably not a long process for them. It's really going to depend on what level of business engagement. Council's taken another step today that they don't have. So that probably means they're going to have to re-engage with their communities if they're going to consider that as well. So that's probably what is going to create an extra timeline into it if they consider the additional restrictions that this council has put into their bylaw. Having said that, we are at the start of our consultation period as well. This is my understanding that no consultation with the businesses has really taken place, no formal consultation on this previously.
Yeah, we have, through the BIA, we've discussed it and bantered it back and forth. Okay, so sorry, I was finding my place. So this is number 4 that we were, that's at the table right now, correct? Coordinate with other communities? Okay, so Councillor Minions.
Yeah, it sounds like the coordination is happening in a couple of weeks anyhow. And if I can just make a very small amendment to say Comox Valley communities and our Comox VIA, just to add that wording in there, although it's already implied, but just to add it to there.
I think we have the BIA listed in our public and business communication as people that we're going to be
Okay,
yeah,
it's fine
it's-
it's fine as is. It's listed somewhere as a
Okay.
main.
Yeah,
point.
we will be making sure to reach out to them. I have a meeting with the BIA manager tomorrow and we'll talk about this.
Yeah, and I brought it up to the executive director the last couple of days. I'll be having a BIA meeting next week, and so I'll make sure they're in the loop. Okay, so all in favor? All right, that's carried. Thank you. So let me find the spot again. Okay, disposition of property at 695 Aspen Road. So we have 4 sections there. And this is for the affordable housing that we've gone into a partnership with through the developer, through Macola. And I think this is a great step forward for Comox helping out with affordable housing where we can. So number 1, that in accordance with covenant CA 82. Okay, thank you.
Second.
All right. So this, just for in case anybody is watching other than Gord there, this is to purchase 6 one-bedroom residential strata lots and parking spaces in the High Street Aspen view. So we have a mover, seconder. Any questions on this? Councillor Bissinger.
Thanks. I'm not sure like where in this whole thing I should be asking the question about the letter of intent, but I guess my question was just because we are having 6 units and we just demolished or we just boarded up the 16 on Balmoral, like is there a way to know that those seniors have been taken care of? And if not, can we give them priority to reside in one of these affordable housing spaces?
Yeah, that is a good question. And the CAO and the planner and I briefly touched on that earlier. So CAO, you're feeling that we have to leave it up to Macola to.
So the decision to move into the affordable housing units is made by BC Housing. It's not something that's made by the municipality. We've have made and will continue to make our desires clear that we intend for this to go to Comox residents and specifically to the senior population in this town that is needs this type of support. Ultimately, the decision of who will be going and who gets those spaces will be a decision by BC Housing and not by the town of Comox.
Okay.
Yeah, and on the Balmoral one, if I remember correctly, those people were all displaced and housed, and they'll get priority back into that building when it's built. So we haven't left them on the street or anything.
Okay. And Stephanie?
Yeah, that was my how I recalled it as well, that because I remember asking them if anybody was going to be displaced, and they said that they were going to be, that they had all been rehomed or rehoused, not cats, and that they would be the first to move back in when they're able to.
I know Bob's living in the Port Augusta right now, so
Oh, okay.
they moved people around and gotten them all out.
Yeah, I've known a few seniors lately in the last month that have been bumped out of their apartments. So it's a real challenge for them to find places. And so we do definitely need to look after them. So so this is number 1. We have a mover and seconder. Any other questions or comments on this? All in favor? New 2.
Second.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Oh, did you have a question?
Just a really quick question. I think the buyback option after the 40 years covers it to back to the town, but was that the alternative? Like we wouldn't go on title, but that buyback would just get rediscussed in 40 years. And that's kind of how we keep our financial interest in that property, is through that buyback versus being on title or some other alternative. That was the solution for that.
Yeah. Yes. The because part of it was we got an additional grant, BC Housing, and they could only give it to the nonprofit. They couldn't give it to us. So this way, we were able to tap into additional funding, purchase all 6 of the units, as opposed to less, and that way we still protect our investment in terms of being able to buy it back for 4 years. Thank you. It's been quite a complicated process, actually, getting all three parties involved and having the right to purchase transferred over and making sure all the legal loopholes are covered. If you can imagine the complexity of a two-person sale in this, and throwing a third into it has been quite challenging, but it does appear, with this motion, that we've all been able to come to agreement on how this is going to work, and that reverter clause is needed in order to get the funding from BC Housing, in order to allow the funding from BC Housing to come from Macola and ensure that the town still has an option to purchase it. There is some level of risk in this. For example, if Macola was to default on the mortgage, the town would have to step in and assume it. So we'd have to get out a mortgage at that point. If for some reason the value of the units was significantly less than the value of the mortgage, but when we start to look at those scenarios, I always say if that's what's happening in the valley at the time, we probably have other issues to deal with and worry about. So I don't see any major hiccups in this.
Go ahead.
Just a quick follow-up on that then. So how do we ensure in 40 years we know that it's revisited? It's just like put in the calendar.
I know I won't be here to remind anybody, so.
No, but it's important. These are going to be valuable assets to the community, and we're going to need to make sure that's taken care of. Yeah, so we can purchase it back for the nominal value, and to let those go, given where housing prices go, to let those go in 40 years just for nothing would be a huge travesty. So we will make sure that does not happen.
Okay, thanks. All right, so on number 2, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Number 3.
Second.
Any questions or comments? And this one. Okay, so all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And number 4. And to me, this is an exciting
Second.
one where we were able to provide some daycare in that building, which is much needed in our community. And I really think, again, to applaud council or staff and council for moving this forward. This whole development, getting the affordable housing component, getting the daycare in there, grant money was really phenomenal on all involved. So thank you all. So this one here, we have a mover and a seconder for the daycare, and all in favor. Great, thank you. Okay. All right, so this is the Northeast Woods transfer to Comox First Nations. So we have a recommendation from the Chief Administration Officer. We have 3 of them. That notice of disposition for Lot 1 District, Lot 194 Comox District, be made with the intent for sale to Comox First Nations. So for anybody watching, this is the Northeast Woods area that people use, and we're looking at selling it to KFN and then getting it back on a lease, 99-year lease for a park. Okay, so that's number 1 is moved, and second. Any questions on that? All in favor? Carried, thanks. And that number 2, council authorizes the sale for $1 to KFN.
Second.
Any questions? I'll give you $20 for it. Okay. It was what, sorry? Oh, $10? Yeah, okay. I'll give you $2. Okay, so all in favor of that? Okay, great. And number 3, that council authorized the town to enter a 99-year lease. Any questions on that? All in favor? All right, thank you. And that's really good, moving that forward, part of the treaty and reconciliation. And I think these are good things. And I just lost my agenda totally. So give me one moment. All right, we're just, we're having technical difficulties here.
Oh, you're on the, you're on. It's on
Page 455. It's the very last page of the agenda.
I'm going through Marvin's 500 pages
Of leisurely reading.
Yeah. You know, it tells you that it takes 2 minutes for the average person to read a page. So you've got about 20 hours worth of stuff. I'm on the title.
Sorry for anybody watching. We're just having problems with the agenda here. All right.
Do you want me to read out the motion? No, actually, we've got to wait for a second anyway.
Well, we're done with the KF.
Correct.
Yeah, this thing is totally.
Well, I had trouble then I downloaded it and it worked and now it's still working.
I don't have any problem. Okay, thanks for standing by. So now that we've got this straightened out, we have the Canada Community Revitalization Fund. So we've got 2 sections there. The council supports the town of Comox application to the Canada Community Revitalization Fund for the construction of a skate park.
Second?
Any questions? I have a question for the CIO. We've been getting a lot of correspondence lately regarding other things such as this multi-use all-weather field, maybe for soccer and that. Would that fit into this, or is this a different stream for the skate park?
So the criteria for this grant would have been tough, if not impossible, to have gotten a artificial soccer turf in for a couple of reasons. One, we would have had to find the space where it would have gone. This money is meant to go to open spaces. Not to say that a soccer field isn't an open space, but it's generally booked for most of the time, especially an artificial turf field. So it is something that we spoke to the granting agency about of what type of project would work best. And they felt that the skateboard park had a much higher chance of success. And not to mention that if we do want to move forward with an artificial turf, we have the question of where that is going to be. We have to have the land identified in this grant application, which we could not have done right away for an artificial turf either. So there were a number of things that made moving forward with an artificial turf just not feasible for this grant application. That's not to say that future grant applications won't come out that would allow an artificial turf to apply. Now, one of the other constrictions that we had with this is that the governments, both at the provincial and federal level, are releasing grants with what feels like shorter and shorter timeframes to get applications in. So this is something that we were able to go out to consulting firms that have done the work in different areas, take 80% of what they've done, find an area in Comox and make some changes in order to get the grant application in. So it was an opportunity to put a grant in and see if we can get some recreation infrastructure approved. If we are successful in this grant, it will come back to council in the same way that the Marine Services has. the grant is successful, here after the cost of, or here after the money in the grant is what the cost is going to be for council to pay to fund. Do you want to move forward with it?
So in the same vein, then, with grants and, something that's been talked around this council table that I brought up a few years ago, and we saw the kids jumping off the roof there, is having a swimming platform, swimming area just off the west end of the breakwater. So same sort of thing, we would maybe look for grants, maybe have to fund that internally. But, we're trying to catch those groups of kids that they're at a certain age that the splash park isn't good. Maybe they're past skateboards as well, but the swimming.
So we do have, council has released the youth EOI, which we spoke about before. We have a group that is working on it. They're going to be going into the schools to have those conversations, and we'll see where it goes. One of the other things that council's added to your strategic plan is to have a shelf-ready grant strategy, and it's something we've made quite a bit of progress on. It's actually just been with the sheer number of grants that have been released in the last, I would say 9 months to a year. Every time we come up with something, we're putting in for the grant, and we've been fairly successful, which is great. It just means we're starting to run, our cupboards are starting to run bare of projects that are ready to go. And it's something that we need to work on and make sure that we have those. And at the end of this RFP, or this EOI, sorry, we hope to have 1 or 2 projects, one based on land and one in the water, that would be a shelf-ready project for these type of grants.
Thanks, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, when this whole thing started, I think that Councillor Bissinger and I were talking about a pump track, and then it morphed into a skate park with a pump track, and now we're on the skate park. Is there a way that we could put the pump track in with this? Maybe not at the same time, but maybe add it later. Is there enough land there to do that? And number 2, how much does this skate park cost, and what would the extra expense be that we would have to come up with?
So based on the estimate that we had, now I've got to find my report. I believe it was 840,000 total, and the grant would cover, the cost was 840,000 total. The grant would cover 640. And there would be the opportunity to scale back the size of the skate park on that and add pump track features, or to keep the same size of skate park and add a pump track onto it as well. The area that we're envisioning would have space for both to be there. There's even the possibility that if we're successful, that we could simply make a swap for a skate park for a pump track. That would be at the, would have to be at the request of council and the permission of the granting agency though.
Okay, and it looks like we're 200 short, so we got 200,000, and where's that coming from?
That would have to come from your capital funds, your reserves, and so that would be a decision council would have to make at the time. If you know right now that you would not build a skate park for 200,000 or a pump track for 200,000, then you can just defeat this, and then we wouldn't have to go through. But like I said, the grant application window closed some time ago. The grant application's in. We need the motion of council to move forward. So if you want to find out whether or not we could be successful, we need this motion.
Yeah, no, I don't have any problem. I just want to know what we're in for and how it's going to all unfold here. I mean, when you can get free money, it's never a bad thing, but it's got to fit within what we're doing too. So,
Councillor Minions, and then McGowan.
Yeah, it's just from memory, but when Ken said, where is that 200,000-ish coming from, which is a good point. It's not free money if you have to put out a bunch, but I thought we had earmarked about 200 to 250 around 2022 for a youth project, like in the budget process. Does that sound familiar that we had thought? And again, that doesn't mean it's there, but in our capital planning, the number was around 200 to 250 that we had said could be a possibility. Does that sound accurate, that we may have already kind of considered that's a possibility?
I don't recall the number amount, but council has talked about the fact that you're wanting to make a fairly significant infrastructure investment in youth recreation facilities in the near future. Again, I don't know if a dollar amount was attached, but I don't think that there was a belief that that type of investment was going to come for anything less than 250,000.
Okay, Councillor McGowan, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, but I think it's basically been dealt with. We all know that we need stuff for teenagers to do, right? The skate parks definitely fall into that.
Okay, thanks. So this is the first part of number 1. that we support the fund. So all in favor? And that's carried, and that council commits to covering any expenses in the construction of the skate park in excess of the amount received by the grant.
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Okay, number 2, that council supports the town of Comox application to the Canada Community Revitalization Fund for additional funds for the construction of the Marine Services Building, and the council commits to covering any expenses in the construction of the Marine Services Building in excess of the amount received by the grant. Okay, any questions on that? Councillor Bissinger.
Thanks. Just because we're looking at it, I think the grant was for $1 million. Now we're looking at 650K extra. Is it safe to say that that would sort of be covered through rents? Like if we amortize it over 25 years or whatever, are we like out of the 3 or 4 units, are we getting sort of a fair market rent out of them that would actually cover that increase? So we're not dipping into additional taxes.
The goal would be to have the maintenance and cost and remaining costs funded by the users. That's correct. But that's something that we're going to have to bring to council on the analysis of what that rent is going to have to be. This is a very unique grant that's come out in the fact that it actually has a separate stream that allows us to put a grant that already has provincial money into it and allow us to leverage that. Usually that they will cap that. Say if you've already gotten money from a different federal or provincial source, you can't apply for this. And this one was actually the opposite. So I think we have a chance to get up to $250,000 further funded in this project if we're successful. So that would go a long way into making the Marine Services Building more affordable.
Thanks. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, no opposed. Thank you. All right, so carrying on, we'll go down to reports from members of council. So we'll start to my left, Councillor Swift, to go around the table, and Bissinger at the end.
Thank you. I'll make it really brief. I attended the Regional District Board meeting and the Recreational Commission's meeting as well.
Thank you, Councillor McGill.
I attended the Comox Valley Substance Use Committee meeting, the Comox Valley Social Planning meeting, Comox Valley Food Policy Council meeting, Climate Caucus call for elected officials, met with over the phone with Minister Whiteside and got some questions answered, which were very positive. And I think that's it.
Okay, Councillor Grant.
So I attended the Rec Commission meeting and the RD meeting. I also attended this afternoon the infrastructure meeting. I'll let you talk about that since I showed up a little bit late. And I also did the party in the parks this weekend, and I think it was pretty successful. We had probably 300 to 400 people down at Marina Park watching there, and about 150 at the other 2 events. So that was good. And our grand total that we spent is approximately $2,250. So there's money left over if we want to have a party. So that's what I did.
Thanks, Councillor Minions.
Yeah, just a big kudos to Ken for that. I went to the final party in the park, which was Sue Wood and John Ming from Comox, and there was about 150 people there, and it was great. People there were really enjoying it, and I hadn't seen that many people kind of out in one spot. So thanks to Ken for that. If it was $2,250 from that one experience, it was well worth it. Attended the minister meeting with Stephanie and Councillor McGowan. And there was some good announcements with specific kind of an additional psychologist for our school district coming our way, and some information on how they're going to try to speed up the psych ed assessments in our school district, which we were hearing were an issue. So for kind of the 10 to 15 minute session, I thought it was interesting to sit in there. Met with a member of the public about the chicken debate, which I thought was very educational on top of all the comments we had. It's really interesting to talk to people that are farmers and have had them, and it's definitely not an easy issue. So I'm glad we somewhat got through that tonight. Talked to 2 members of the public about the garbage issue, and it was kind of right at the tail end there. So I kind of encouraged that there was solutions coming, and just magically they seemed to ease up on that. So that was really nice. Well, yeah, 2 that called quite not as happy. I talked to a member of the public about the Comox stormwater management plan, which is again a really tough thing to understand. As we heard from the public hearing, it's really challenging to figure out exactly what could happen, what can't happen. But there was definitely some concern for that ecosystem in the area with how it is now and what could happen. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of it was similar concerns to the two attendees tonight, I would say. So getting a response back, it's good to know we kind of get the reassurance that those things have been looked into in the most educated way possible. Our engineers have looked into those things, so we can then move on. We'll move on with that. And then just quickly talk to Haley today about what that could look like with plastics and making sure everyone's on board and really making that a positive thing and something that we can make a really cool thing for our community since we are so close to the ocean. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bissinger.
Thanks. Getting prepared for some community justice meetings. So I'm taking over both of Councillor McKenna's assignments as well as nautical days. Chatted with some residents about Buena Vista and the potential sidewalk or lack of sidewalk and just road redesign. And also flew to Ottawa twice. So that's great for greenhouse gas emissions, but that's what happens when you don't have childcare. And that is all.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can't remember, CAO, you and I met with the RCMP regarding the traffic issues. I'm not sure if I had reported that or if it was after the last meeting. I think it was after the last one, but I had a run-in with some speeders in town, and after having a little more discussion with them over coffee, we've started a dialogue. I've met with the RCMP, with the CAO, and talked with their traffic enforcement, and we're just trying to educate them as to how they're impacting our community with these speeding cars and loud mufflers, and so far so good. The CAO and I met with the owner of the recycling depot on Anderton, and he talked about the challenges he's having there, and he's trying to find a bigger location. With most of you all, I attended the town barbecue, recognizing some of our great work of our staff that they're doing. Opened the Outrigger event last Sunday and Saturday that was, and that brought in outriggers from the Lower Mainland, Lower Vancouver Island, and it was a well-attended event. Party in the Park, again, kudos to Councillor Grant for being really instrumental. Get that Party in the Park music. Instrumental in putting that all together. Yeah, putting that all together, because it was really well received. I was at the one at the Marina Park, and it was great. With Councillors Minion and McGowan and the CAO, had a UBC conference call with the Minister of Education, where the two councillors voiced some concerns that were well received from the minister. Today, with the Director of Operations, CAO, Councillor Grant, and I, we sat in and had another UBC meeting with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, and that was Minister Ma. And what the town of Comox is trying to do is convince the region, or convince the province to redo the road from the town boundary, which is in the area of the Comox Airport, all the way down towards the Kai Bay Road. That's been an area that's been flagged by cyclists for quite a while for having, it's dangerous in there. There's no shoulders, gravel shoulders. It drops about 3-4 inches. And luckily for us, the minister was a cyclist, and she's all for that type of thing. And so I'm hopeful. It sounded good that they will kind of pick up where our work is once we do the work down at the Point Homes area for the reconstruction of that road, that maybe they can continue on. So that's all I have. And and I did meet with Karen Kratz. Karen is a advocate for people with disabilities, and you may recall she brought the attention of the mural at Aspen corner with the letdowns. So her and I went to that area, we looked at it, and I promised her I'll keep that dialogue going. And as I said to her, we've, over the last few years with this council, we've really taken a look at things with the lens of climate change, which I think we've done great. I think we need to look at things with a lens of accessibility options for people who are in need of them that perhaps we don't see them. And so I'd like to keep this dialogue going with Karen, and it'll be helpful for all our community as we get older and maybe we're in walkers and whatnot. It's really an eye opener. So that's all I have. And I'll leave it at that. And a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Alex, good seeing you, Gord. See you.